Good morning and welcome to the June 7th, 2023 board workshop. There will be no votes made during this workshop. This is information only for actually the board for some clarification. Of course, this morning we will be discussing the choice programs. So thank you very much. And Ms. Ball Oliver, thank you.
Good morning. This morning we are going to expound upon upon the regulation portion of this policy and share with you some additional information as it relates to the choice programs and the use of the rubric in terms of criteria moving forward beginning for next school year. I have with me this morning wonderful team of principals that are here. I just asked them why they're all not at work. But I have Jessica Horton, our program coordinator for Choice, and Dr. Jimmy Cave that will be leading the presentation. And so if they would come forward, they're going to take you into a bit of a deeper dive of the how and the why, and then how the process works. And they're going to show you some actual real-world examples and explain more about those iReady test scores and what that truly means in the context of a student and their academic success.
Good morning. We'd like to start by just reviewing the guiding principles that drove the work of our committee. Those guiding principles are to expand eligibility criteria for the application process that affords greater opportunities to examine the whole child for choice program admissions. Also, to continue maintaining the rigor and high expectations of choice programs. So now Dr. Cave is going to come and present some information that's specific to the rubric and the criteria that we've proposed.
Thank you, Ms. Horton. Good morning. So considering the whole child, as we mentioned before, the rubric that we're proposing has 5 categories: assessments for ELA, assessment for math, choice GPA, attendance, and discipline. Each one of those categories is weighted 20% for the ELA assessment, 20% for the math assessment, 30% for choice GPA, and 15% each for attendance and discipline. Students will need to accumulate at least 100 points to meet criteria and be eligible for the lottery. I also want to notate the second column on the left, the not accepted column. Students who find themselves in any one of those situations will not be eligible for the lottery. And also noting at the bottom of the slide, the appeals process remains in place. Some additional considerations. The assessment eligibility requirements for choice programs are based on the middle year data, and that's typically that window from November to December. So middle-year assessments capture data for students that are relative to end-of-year standards. So even though a student who may not be on grade level or measured on grade level by the time that middle-year assessment is administered, there's still a whole semester of instruction that would take place to help that student and move that student to the next grade level. Students that are interested in Garrison School for the Arts, Savannah Arts Academy, must meet the academic, behavioral, and attendance rubric requirements in order to audition. Students are selected for program entry based on their audition rubric score for one of the arts areas. They are ranked order and seated based on their audition rubric score and the number of seats available in each arts area. A student can have a perfect GPA, meet all assessment, attendance, and discipline criteria, and still may not be seated due to a low audition score. However, they are placed on the wait list. And once again, the appeal process remains the same. Here are some of the supports that we find in all of our schools across Savannah Chatham Public Schools. And of course, these supports are in place to identify areas of need for students and be able to address, some of those areas specifically related to that particular student. Now I would like to share some real-world examples that include some data from actual students that we have in our schools. The first example is a STEM Academy student who just recently completed 6th grade with us this past school year. This is their beginning of the year reading diagnostic. Looking at the diagnostic information, their overall reading score comes from how the student performed on each one of those domain areas. And you see the domain levers on the right-hand side of the slide. And so it's possible that a student could be measured a grade level below or even 2 grade levels below just by missing 2, 3, or 4 questions in that specific domain. So that's not uncommon. I also looked at the historical data, I-rated data for this particular student, and their middle of the year data on the reading assessment that they took in 5th grade had the student measure at grade 4. If the rubric was in place at the time that the student applied for the STEM Academy, that student still would have been eligible to participate in the lottery because they were just 1 grade level below. I mentioned earlier about the supports and interventions that we have in place across our schools in Savannah-Chatham County. In addition to those supports, teachers are equipped and utilize effective instructional strategies to help support students in terms of moving them to the next level and addressing their individual needs. We see that in this case for this particular STEM Academy student, where they actually moved and performed exceptionally well on their domains in those specific areas. And it also translated to the student increasing their overall reading diagnostic score by 64 points. Very significant. So how does that relate to academic outcomes? Here's a snapshot of the student's end of year report card. So going back to the student performing at grade 4 on the reading diagnostic and looking specifically at their language arts grade that they had at the end of the year, the student actually earned an 89 for their yearly average at the end of the year. And not only were they successful in language arts, but you can see also that they were also successful in other courses that they've taken. Next example is another STEM Academy student and looking at their beginning of the year math diagnostic. Once again, looking at their historical I-rated data, the student was measured at grade 4 when they took the assessment in 5th grade. And so they actually came into STEM Academy on the grade level of grade 4. With the work of the teachers, providing those supports and interventions, we were able to move that student significantly on their domain areas, and the student increased their overall I-rated performance on the math diagnostic by 37 points. Looking at their end of year report card and how to perform, looking at their math performance first, the student earned an 89 for their yearly average for that course. And then as you can see as well, they perform extremely well in their other academic areas as well. Before I go into the data for this 8th grade student, with these accelerated programs, students are asked to complete 3 years of middle school in 2 years. Their 8th grade year with us, they take the high school physical science course, they take the honors algebra 1 course, and they also take the honors 9th grade comp lit course. So looking at the students' beginning of the year I-rated data for the reading diagnostic, the student actually was measured at grade 7. And of course, you can see on the right-hand side how they performed in the various domain areas. With the work of our teachers, we were able to move that student. They performed a lot better in those domain areas, which thus increased their overall score for the math diagnostic, reading diagnostic, by 33 points. And looking at their end of year report card, focusing firstly on their 9th grade comp lit grade, the students earned a 95 as an end of year grade for that particular course. And as you see the other areas that they've taken academics, they did extremely well also. Another STEM Academy student who just completed 8th grade with us, this is their initial math diagnostic. The same scenario is in play here. The student was measured at grade 7 at the beginning of the year. With those interventions and support measures provided by our teachers, we were able to move that student overall score of 21 points on the math diagnostic. And the student also realized improvement on those various domain areas associated with math. Looking at the student's end-of-year report card data, focusing first on the Algebra 1 honors course, the student earned an 87 for the course as their end-of-year grade, and they also scored an 84 on the end-of-course assessment, end-of-course test for the Algebra 1 course. One final example, we have an 8th grade student who just completed their work at Garrison School for the Arts. This is their beginning math diagnostic, beginning of the year math diagnostic. You can see where the student actually was on grade 7 initially. The teachers assisted that child and got them to the point to where they increased their overall by 38 points. And you also see the strength of performance on their domain areas as well. End of your report card shows that the student did significantly well on their academic portion. Looking at their Algebra 1 course, specifically, they earned a 94 in the course for the year, and they actually performed at, made an 86 on the inter-course assessment. So not only our students are on a trajectory, our 8th grade students are on a trajectory to meet eligibility criteria for our high school choice programs, but they're also poised to perform well academically as well. So with the rubric approach, we provide a greater picture of the whole student and their threshold for success. We've also talked about how we're able to identify some of those areas of support, and early on, as a matter of fact, by utilizing these assessment diagnostics. And then the real-world examples that are just shared, of course, suggest that student performance indicates strong likelihood for students to be overall successful and grow within our programs. I also want to mention and note that application process and criteria must be posted within 30 days prior to the start of the school year. Thank you. Any questions you have for the team?
Okay, I'm sure we have plenty, so I'm just going to go around, starting with Dr. Hall. Any questions? Oh, okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, we'll start with Ms. Grabowski.
Do I get to volley it back over that? I'm just teasing. Thank you, Dr. K, for the presentation and for everyone for coming back to be with us. I know that your time is precious, and we appreciate your presence here and all the hard work that you've done. Thank you for the examples. It's always great to see, real world examples. I guess my only question would be, have you been able to kind of look at taking those examples kind of across the grade band and see if that type of accelerated learning has been you're always going to have outliers, but have you been able to see if that accelerated learning has been pretty consistent for the students who are, having to make that adjustment from where they start the year?
Yes, we have. We've actually looked at the data at the school level across grade bands to ensure that our students are set up, firstly, for success. And then also taking that data back and, really identifying what strategies were extremely helpful and that worked. And then what some of the things that we need to address, for future, consideration for our students. But we were able to see, that level of success amongst the various grade bands.
Well, I think it's great, and it certainly is compliments to the teachers and the staff that work so hard for that. This is not related to the choice program, but because iReady is something that is, we've been using for a couple of years now, have your teachers been able to see how can you talk a little bit about how iReady has been helpful for the teachers in being able to really pinpoint the areas where, assuming it has been helpful, how they've been able to use that data?
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate that question. So we actually started using iReady a couple years ago at the STEM Academy. And the first, feedback that I got from teachers was that this is such a tremendous tool, and the fact that they're able to drill down and see exactly where those areas of needs for their individual students. That then led them to, prescribe, so to speak, individual learning plans for those students based on those needs. So having that data readily available and having it drill down to the domain level, teachers can have a targeted approach to how they support their students. And then also, from the student perspective, they appreciated, that tool as well because they're able to see and monitor their own progress, which I think is, certainly, a positive in the sense that, making students, advocate for themselves and also owners of their own learning. And so we saw that benefit as well by using the iReady platform.
Thank you.
I don't really, well, I kind of have a question. I really appreciate the data analysis and seeing what the interventions were and what the results of them are. I know that this is a choice program focus in terms of, what we do well and how we are accelerating. I think I'm going to play devil's advocate for a parent that may be watching this meeting that's not in the choice program and seeing this and seeing this kind of one-on-one work with the students. What would you tell a parent that would see that kind of acceleration for students in the choice programs you represented? What would you tell them to alleviate their feelings of FOMO, where, if my child got that kind of engagement at my neighborhood school, my child would be going through the charts too. And I know that's not the focus of the presentation, but I was kind of looking at this like, wow, this is so awesome. What would the underdog think looking at this presentation? Can you give me some thoughts on that?
Sure, and I'm going to ask Ms. Barlow to kind of chime in with me as well. But, what I would certainly share with the parent is that, these structures and these tools are not only in place at our choice schools, they're across our schools in general, Savannah, Chatham. And so their opportunity lies within other schools who don't have choice programs to accelerate their students and provide opportunities for students to engage in high school credit level courses once they reach the 8th grade level. So I do know that that's here. We do have that. The other thing that I was, offer to the parent too is, it's certainly fine and okay to advocate for your child in terms of, having the child identified for gifted services, but then also saying, hey, my child is really on point with this. What are some of those accelerated opportunities that you have available in your school that my child can take advantage of? And so that's what I would offer.
Thanks. That's really helpful. And I'm going to neutralize my own question by saying what I heard you say, what my translation of what you said is these are simply case studies for the same kinds of supports that you can ask for in any school.
Absolutely.
And if you saw this and you weren't aware of that, now you are, and you can start asking for those sorts of things wherever you are in the district.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Dr. Cave, I'm glad this is you because I know I can ask you anything and I'll get a great answer. One of the criticisms we've had as a board for the whole 12 years I've been on the board is that what we have actually done with these choice schools is create a private school system within our public schools to the detriment of those students who Dr. Hodson-Brown is referring to as the underdogs. I'd like to know, I know you're leaving STEM, but if you could just give me a quick sense of a teacher profile for STEM, because it's always been my contention that the level of instruction is what makes the difference. I don't care
Yes, ma'am.
where you are. So in terms of their level of education, their attendance, their years of teaching, what would you say a typical STEM teacher's profile would look like?
Yes, ma'am. And thank you for that question. So this is my opportunity to kind of boast and brag a little bit. So, I'm privileged to work with, some talented and amazing educators. But when we look for members to become a part of our team, we look for a particular mindset and approach to education. And what we look for are teammates and colleagues who are into collaboration, because it takes all of us to do this work. And so it's not one person trying to accomplish all of this on their own. And so we look for a person who has a collaborative mindset and collaborative spirit. The other thing that we look for, too, is an educator or teacher who is not afraid of taking risks. And what I share with them, I give them the flexibility and the freedom to take those risks. And my attitude, to them was that, if it works, great, outstanding. We can build upon that. If it doesn't work, we know not to do that again. So there are some learnings that are happening with that. The other thing is that, we pride ourselves on being continuous learners. So we have embedded, several opportunities for professional development for our staff members. We also encourage them to go out to, conferences and visit other places too, and bring that knowledge back and present to staff via our staff meetings, our faculty meetings. We don't have sit and get faculty meetings. We have what we call ed camp style faculty meetings, to where our teachers are professionals and the experts, and so they present to the staff on some unique, strategy or something that's working extremely well in the classrooms, and so they share that, school wide. And then we also charge teachers who are in those sessions to take that knowledge back to their classrooms and implement those, processes in their particular classrooms. So we're looking for someone who is open and willing to engage in that work, someone who's committed. And then, of course, above all of that is the love for our babies, love for our students. We're doing this work, for them. And so that's the typical teacher that we have at the STEM Academy. And I'm sure those are teachers that we have in our schools across the district as well.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is that you as a principal have a lot of autonomy in terms of the people who you bring in. It's not just HR sending you, whoever happens to be available. You have some
Correct.
autonomy in not only who you choose, but in what their conduct, their instructional conduct is at your school. And you're
Absolutely.
saying that's autonomy that all of our principals have.
Yes, ma'am.
To pick and choose those people who they think are collaborative and all the other things that you said.
Yeah, absolutely, on the initial end. And then certainly, as you move through the course of the school year and administrators conduct their observations, that's an opportunity to provide feedback to, staff members, if they're not seeing, staff members, actually, really engage in the work as we expect. Then we provide opportunities to kind of grow and coach those teachers to bring them to the level where we need them.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, and I'll echo my colleagues. Thank you to all for the massive effort on developing this plan and this process and presenting us with data. So I'm going to ask some questions and make some statements and ask if they're accurate. People have asked me why are we doing this, and what's it going to look like. So thank you for the real-world examples that you've presented. So my understanding of the why is twofold. One, we want to increase the opportunity for more people to participate in our choice programs if that is what their passion, a particular program might be. And connected to that, we also want to create an ecosystem that would support their ability to be successful within that choice program. Is that a fair statement of why we're doing this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So for years, our choice program had entrance criteria, and they were applied with less discretion than this program describes now. You either met these numbers or you didn't. There was an opportunity for kind of an appeal and an individualized assessment, but it was more ad hoc, less kind of formal and structured. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And then COVID comes along, our worlds turn upside down, and we eliminate some academic criteria as a component of entering choice programs. And we're on the back end of COVID. The world has changed. We're trying to figure out how we want to handle this moving forward. And through the work of the team and others not in the room, the system we've come up with tries to meet the goals articulated earlier, which is more opportunity for access, but also providing a platform for success, while balancing the more rigorous requirements of our programs, be they academic, be they whatever, by putting into place this robust metrics system where we analyze all sorts of components of the overall student.
That would be accurate as well.
Okay. So when I got asked this the other day, why are you fixing something that, at least in some people's minds, is not broken? And then we had a discussion about, well, that's your perspective, but other people might think it is. So here's my question now. what I'm hearing from all of you expert educators and administrators, and I say that not flippantly, but respectfully, is this is our collective judgment of how we can increase opportunity and access while ensuring the people coming into these choice programs are prepared to be successful if they put in the work, and we're also providing them a platform to be successful. And so we think this is the best overall process to ensure the success and continuity of our programs without compromising their current levels of performance. Is that accurate?
I'm going to defer to the principal team as well as to Ms. Hoffman that is here. I think they could best speak to that, if they would like
And
to
I'll tell you
answer.
why I ask that. Over the last few years, I've heard anecdotally, and I'm saying anecdotally on purpose, that students who were admitted into some of our choice programs struggled. Some dropped out. I heard from families and from students it was hard. There was remediation required. And others complained we spent more time learning stuff from 8th grade math than doing accelerated work, which is what I thought I was here to do. Now, that wasn't the majority of the feedback, but it was some of the feedback. So what I want to hear from the principal team, from leadership, is we think where we peg the numbers on this matrix to analyze whether you're even eligible for the lottery is going to ensure success along with all of the supports that we've identified. And we think this is the right balance to not impact the efficacy of these choice programs.
So I'm going to ask, because I don't think they'll volunteer in a board setting, if I'm going to ask if Ms. Curry, Ms. Parks, Mr. McGuire, if they would speak to that, and then if any of their colleagues would chime in, I think that might help start the process.
Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to have you voluntold.
And as they're coming forward, I'd like to add also that we were utilizing a different assessment prior to COVID, and that we also changed the assessment that we use. We moved from MAP to iReady. So we changed the assessment. We also were better able to get diagnostic data and data to support what we did with our students in terms of helping them reach the level of performance they needed to be successful. So that was also a caveat in relooking at this as well.
Good morning. So the simple answer to your question would be yes. However, we want to make note that we began this process in March of last year. So the decisions that we've made were not taken lightly. There were a great deal of discussions from all points of views regarding where the best compromise should be as it relates to admissions or the criteria for choice programs. So it wasn't something that we considered fast, I should say. We took our time. We looked at various data points to include what the colleges were doing. And then we also included not just the principals in the discussion, but also district leaders as well as CTA members as well in the discussion. So to answer your question, at this point, yes, we are in a place where we feel that our students will remain successful in our programs. But I would defer to the other principals who report to the front office.
Good morning. I concur with my colleagues. I think that, I know that we really deliberated back and forth with each other and with other colleagues in the district and thought that this was the best. We wanted to make sure that the supports were in place. I'm at an art school. The arts is just as rigorous as the academics, and so balancing both of those things is very difficult sometimes for some of our kiddos. But we do have in place a remediation for the arts as well as remediation processes for academics as well. So looking at the structure, again, the answer would be yes. We believe that we have thought through processes and put this in place to support children.
All right, and I guess I concur also with my colleagues. But I will say one of the benefits of going through this process, and like Ms. Curry stated, this is something that we've done over a long period of time and had a lot of conversations. But I think the benefit of these conversations have been the best practices and the things that we've learned from our colleagues and others from across the state and from across the country who are going through similar processes. Dr. Hoskins Brown asked a very poignant question, and one that we've always considered when we're talking about working and developing our students. And being a part of this group and talking with so many people, we've learned there's so many great practices and things that are taking place across the district. And so going through this process has allowed us to kind of, as teachers, we always kind of steal from one another to learn how to best do things and apply and work with our students. And I think going through this process allowed for us to really create a robust program that allowed us to reach the need of all of the students within Savannah-Chatham County.
And to add to that, Mr. Ketchmar, they didn't say, we also had teacher groups from the schools represented and parts of their leadership team, so we had them weigh in as well and give feedback. And I have to tell you, our toughest critic and our best feedback, Ms. Hoffman, if you would please, she was a big help from Savannah Arts Academy, questioned us, made us rethink some things, look at some things, as well as some of her colleagues. So we included them in the process as well.
Thank you for that information, and I apologize that I put you on the spot to be voluntold to stand up this morning. So 2 comments, and then I'll pass the mic. One, what if this gets implemented and it starts, what are we doing on the back end to analyze application to see if it's having the intended consequences, impacts, the negatives we were concerned about are not occurring? And I'm not talking about just in the application and lottery and admission process, but in what's going on day to day in the schools in terms of, are we remediating too many kids still? Are we not accelerating in the choice programs or moving forward? So do we have, every 6 months, the month of, September, we're analyzing data? Have we identified what data we're going to look at? So that's question number 1. Question number 2, I saw on the slide we have to adopt a regulation 30 days before school starts. No. Why is my question? Is that policy? Is that state law? When the lottery process doesn't start until February.
Yeah, so if I could address that before the other technical questions for the group. You will see today modifications to the administrative regulation side of policy GBA, which is admissions. Many years we've had discussions about the admissions component, specifically as it relates to choice programs. It used to be specialty, as we all know. And some of what we wanted to do to memorialize in that policy section was to be very clear about process for admissions into unique programs such as previously specialty and now choice. And the other part of it was the tiered component of the auditions and the rankings, which is really what was the component of the administrative regulation that we've been working from. There were references in there, of course, that said that the superintendent will set criteria for getting into unique programs such as choice programs. So you see that today on your agenda, which has been modified to account for some of these proposed changes. You will see there that there are components that really give flexibility for the administration to determine what is the best way to do that. Now, to the direct question, there has always been embedded in there for a number of years, and this came from a previous board review. I think it was a previous board member, Ms. Wade, who made it very strongly noted that it's important that parents know at the beginning of the school year what the criteria is for getting into choice programs well before we begin the process. So we're actually a full almost year and a half ahead any given time of posting that criteria as required by the language that is in the current administrative regulation, and that remains unchanged, that you'll review today at the regular session. So when we say that it is a requirement of the district to ensure that the criteria is posted within 30 days of the start of the school year, that is a component that came out of the board's requirement and request for that to be done from a number of years ago. So that remains unchanged. And it's important today that we recognize that that deadline is looming, because obviously we want to do this before we close down for the July 4th holiday week. and any changes or modifications to the associated regulation, which you'll review today, it is our hope that we would be able to have that done and buttoned up so that we can meet that requirement.
Also, it's incumbent upon us to communicate the changes to our parents. I think that was the spirit of that initially, making sure that our parents saw at the beginning of the year. If you're a middle school parent, of course, you're interested in what that criteria will be. If your upcoming ninth grader is interested. So we made a commitment 2 years ago to make sure that parents were aware of the criteria before the start of school. That was part of that.
Ms. Hoskins Brown had a question.
Thank you. So I appreciate the question and the explanation, and I think that there is our policy, and then there is the community protocol, and my impression from the parents who talk to me about choice programs is they're preparing years in advance. So the 30 days is important, and we need to do that, but I hope that doesn't lull us into believing that parents are not strategizing how to get their child into choice. Like, their middle school parents are not just thinking about high school. They were thinking about it in elementary, and they are just looking for a reinforcement for the preparation that they have been on for many years when they look at the policy at 30 days. At least that is my impression. I'm seeing principals nod, so. Okay, I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, and the calls come in at elementary about Savannah Arts or about, if I want to go in the medical program at Beach or Jenkins, Johnson.
Ms. Hall?
I just want to say that I wish Ms. Joy Keith Smith was here this morning because, as Dr. Hoskins Brown said, yes, many parents are aggressive, but there are many who are not as readily aware of what we have going on. And I think our gifted and talented program at our home schools could do a lot to help parents who may not be on the ready to get their children up and prepared for these choice programs as their children get older. So I hope there is some communication between her department and the choice program administrators in terms of this whole broad effort we're going to do to get more children who otherwise would not be at these choice programs involved. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you.
Excuse me. Mr. Ketchmar, you were waiting on them to answer your question as it relates to the data?
Just tell me that we do have a plan to analyze outcomes later. That's all I need to know.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. McGuire, Ms. Cave, Ms. Curry, thank you for being prepared on the wing to come up and speak. Dr. Cave, thank you for this wonderful presentation, and to all the principals, thank you for what you do for our children on a regular basis. My question is very simple. Mr. Sean asked a question of why. My question is more so of what. As the board, I would like to know what could we do to support this program even more. If you all had to submit a wish list, what would that wish list look like? Or
I know
you can
Garrison
say
come
that
up and
we have
talk.
done an amazing job, and we'll take that as well.
So I think everyone will have a different wish list. So I'll help them out by saying they all have a wish list. I've seen them all or heard them in phone conversations, but I think they would be different and specific to their programmatic needs. If they would like to share a few things with you, we can capture that. But because their programs are so very different, I think their wish list would look a little bit different. But some of the ones that are here can share a few items with you now. They all have them.
All right. So again, you guys are doing a great job, so I just want to say that too. But I would think as we are continuing to further this information out, just further assistance as far as communication, helping to get that information out to parents. I know there have been conversations about having the rubric to be made readily available for parents so they could input their information there. And so having a process or an opportunity for parents to be made aware of those things. I think our district does a really good job of informing parents. We have the expo in January where we share a lot of that information. We also have our back to school expo that we're getting ready for here in just a month, really, at this point, where we'll have another opportunity to share more and more information. So I think initially I would say just more opportunities to share this information with parents. So that way when we meet that 5th grade parent that's looking for their high school, we can have that information readily available for them.
And I would just ditto what he's saying. We are Garrison School for the Arts, and the communication I cannot understate that. Whenever someone asks you about our programs, to be able to give them this information and share that we are supportive of all of our students, and we do have the remediation processes in place, but we do also enrich our kids as best we can. So we've got all our teachers are equipped and can handle all of those situations, and just communicating that to the public as well. Of course, we have a whole wish list, and we'll get that to you.
I think
Okay. All right. Dr. Brigham?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the work that this committee has put forward. I have some musings, thoughts, and then maybe I'll go a little deeper than the lawyers questioning and ask for an altar call. Thank you for developing a more holistic approach versus just a couple lines in the sand that we had prior. This is a much more holistic approach to the full student. Thank you for showing and proving what I already knew, and I think the other board members knew, that students can show up to these schools, grade levels below, and be successful. Thank you for letting us hear the word remediation a bunch of times today, but I think for many of us that word is negative for some reason, because in our society we like to put a negative connotation to remediation. My doctoral students remediate graded assignments all the time. All the time. They sometimes, unfortunately, feel that it's a negative experience as well. But it's making sure that they're getting what they need to get, that they're on grade level, that they're getting closer to grade level. Thank you for proving to us with that data and with what you do each and every day that we can't expect perfection. We can't expect every single student to be on grade level or above grade level. That leaves so much, that we are ignoring so many students if we expect that. So I am glad to see this holistic approach will allow more students to not be denied the opportunity to have their name pulled in the lottery to go to these programs. I believe that your work has set a threshold for success. Your 100 out of 300 score, which I'm sure was one of those things that you batted back and forth in meetings. I'm going to guess that was a couple meetings, and probably somebody every so often would bring it back up, and you'd be like, are we going back to this again? And that's what you need to do. I think that's where Mr. Katchmar was saying, what's that data going to show? Because no doubt, when we use this rubric, y'all are all going to, it's like, we're done. No, that committee isn't going away, I doubt it. You just might not have to meet as much, but you'll have data points, and then you'll be able to reevaluate that threshold for success. And that's what I would implore you to do in the years to come is, okay, is 100 out of 300 what we need? Or does it need to be 110 or 120? Or do we need to tweak this little thing? This rubric allows you so many other areas to tweak rather than, what was it, attendance, behavior, and a test score? You know, okay, so we can bump those up maybe 1 or 2, but this allows, I think, the group as a whole a lot more places to look at. Okay, there are students grabbing a bunch of points here, and that's pushing them into lottery, but they're not being successful, so maybe we need to change that portion of the rubric, or maybe we need to change that threshold of success. So as to the why, I think we're developing, in this day and age, a better system, a more holistic system, and I thank you so much for that. And thank you for showing us students that got into classrooms and got excited, I think, and pushed themselves. And to Dr. Hoskins-Brown's question, I think that happens across the district if we ask principals to come in here. But I also think we need more parents to say, help me understand that this is happening for my student as well. So my 2 big asks of the group, and some of you are already standing, so I don't know if the rest, but would you, if you were on this committee and you support this rubric, would you stand? Yeah, I thought so. And if you believe that this rubric would actually lessen our standards, would you sit back down?
Can we like just?
You want to do a little like, yeah, you want to drop it and bring it back up? We'd have to get a beat. So thank you for telling us that the work you've put into, you believe in. As a board member, I have to believe you as the content expert, and I have to believe that you will go back to it as a content expert and say, this is where we can make this better for our district and for our students. So again, thank you. I fully support this, and I fully support the work you do each and every day.
Mr. Johnson. First off, I would like to thank everybody for the hard work. As many, if not all of y'all in this room know, that my own son, my only child, has been in a choice program for the past 6 years. And it's been a very delightful experience. His principal is sitting right over there. So my questions, and I have some comments as well, is I know y'all had the data on there about some growth with some students from STEM and Garrison and whatnot. Is that the normal growth that you're seeing for students that might not have gotten into those schools previously, as well as the students that would have still at the same time? Is that normal growth? Or do I need to rephrase the question?
We want to make sure we understand.
Okay. The students that came in that you showed us on the slides had started under grade level, like 1 grade level below, and they moved up into at least at the grade level they should be in. Are you seeing that across the board as normal growth for those students that might not have gotten into those choice programs previously? And is that normal growth also at the same time of those students that would have gotten into choice programs previously?
Yeah, I don't have that data
Okay.
to reference across, the district. But speaking specifically about the STEM Academy, we realized, growth in reading and math this year based on the iReady assessment. Our ELA, our reading scores, we grew our students 167%. For math, which we knew was going to be challenging because math is, one of those concepts that could be difficult, but we were still able to grow our students 100%. Like I said, they're just STEM Academy numbers. Unfortunately, I don't have numbers across the district to kind of respond to that question.
Okay. My next question is, I guess, more for Ms. Ball Oliver, and maybe if some of y'all want to take it as well. My biggest question is, what do we tell the families that from previous school years that would have qualified for a choice program that didn't, but that would have with this new rubrics? What do we tell those families that, we're sorry, that they wouldn't have gotten into that they would have gotten into a choice program, or at least gotten into the lottery because they were qualified for it, but they didn't back in the day?
So I think that part of our explanation for that would be that our criteria, this is kind of like a third change, and we would probably explain to them that we had a specific criteria pre-COVID But we also had to pivot during COVID and change that criteria. And we did not use these assessments, and now we have this criteria. So if a parent were to approach any of our school principals, I'd ask them to refer them to me, and I could have that discussion and go through the criteria with them and explain how we've changed and evolved over time. Or they can contact Dr. Lewis or Ms. Horton for program choice opportunities, and they run that department. So we would be happy to meet with them one-on-one if we were to get those kinds of inquiries.
Thank you. Couple of other things, sorry. I know that I've had parents from choice programs from all over the county say that since COVID started and the kids have been, well, in the choice programs prior to it, that disciplinary issues have risen. They've risen all over the district, and I understand that. But when they went to the choice programs, they were not expecting to have certain disciplinary issues, like bullying has gotten worse at schools, and that some of it's being properly reported, but some of it's not. So my issue is, what do we tell parents who went into these choice programs, knowing that there are higher expectations at these schools, and what is being done in order to ensure that that student is not being harassed by other students, and when they do say something, it gets worse?
So what I would do is recommend that that parent follow the protocol for such and start with the principal. We have school counselors. We acknowledge that coming back from COVID, many of our students, due to multiple reasons, a lot of that could be a lack of the ability to engage in social activities with peers of their own age group, experience some challenges in their behaviors. We've seen that across our district, just like they've seen it across the state and the nation. I do believe as we provide opportunities for our students to be more engaged, I don't want to say as we get back to normal, but as we provide opportunities to support them and redirect that behavior, we see those changes that are occurring. So I would recommend that they follow the protocol, start with the principal, work with the counselors, and then, of course, we always like to provide opportunities for the families to work with each other, because sometimes it's simply about coming to the table and mediating and reaching an understanding. So we have various ways to deal with that, and I would recommend that they do that. And then, of course, we're always available, governance, to assist them if needed.
Thank you. With these changes in the regulations, I know we technically don't vote on regulations. I would, however, like to see it more in policy and not in regulations about options for changing the choice programs admissions, just because I feel like we need to keep the highest possible standards for choice programs with giving more options at local schools, at the neighborhood schools. I think that would bring somebody who wants to be able to get into the choice program, still knowing that there's those incredibly high standards to even get into it, but still giving those children who aren't there yet an opportunity in their neighborhood schools to be able to take the same kind of courses, whether it's arts, whether it's STEM, whether it's CTAE. Having more choices in the neighborhood schools and more options for coursework, I think, as a whole, would benefit our entire district as a whole. So, thank you.
All right. Let's finish with Ms. Hall, and I know Ms. Hoskins and Mr. Grabowski also have to speak, and I will speak last.
Howard Hall, because it's two halls.
I'm sorry, Howard Hall.
Yes, first of all, I would like to thank all of our principals, those who are the sage on the stage that's up here, and those who are out in the audience. I thank all of you. I understand the work that you all do daily. Dr. Kays, you referenced two of my favorite words, and the words that you referenced are often applauded in our TSI schools. They're often applauded in our CSI schools, and those two words were significant growth. And to sit here and hear a principal from a choice school expound on significant growth is a game changer. Not only that, it reflects our mission, the highest levels for all. It's very inclusive, and I'm excited about it. And we need to always focus on, I see things and I've been hearing different things in the, I won't say in the community, but on social media, terminology such as we are setting our students up for failure. But I'm here to say that we are setting our students up for opportunity. We are setting our students up for choice. We are setting our students up for success. So the only question that I have is and Ms. Ball Oliver touched on it some, what are our plans to ensure that our parents are involved with the growth process as it pertains to academic rigor? And it can be from somebody out there. I see Mr. Muhammad out there. I see Savannah Arts out there. I see Jenkins out there, different schools. So we don't want to make anyone feel that these are the top principals. I guess they were just randomly called. But I know all of you have, something that you'd like to say as well if you desire to.
So I think that was a great choice. Mr. Muhammad, Ms. Handy, and Dr. Ballou. Team one, you're good. Not you, Dr. K. Team one, Ms. Curry, Ms. Parks, Mr. McGuire. I think Mr. Daughtry is going to join them as well. I believe that's Daughtry, Dr. Ballou, and Ms. Handy. If you could join Mr. Muhammad and support your colleague.
Can you repeat the question? Just short version.
The question is, what is your plan to involve parents in the process of academic rigor as we continue to show the world that students can make significant growth at all levels, whether it's TSI, CSI, or choice?
Thank you. In all of our schools, we all have plans and things in place to help our students be successful. And a lot of it does still come with communication, letting our students and our parents know, guardians and everyone, all of the programs that are in our buildings, such as tutorials, making sure that everyone has a tutorial schedule and knows when those take place. If we have any type of Saturday activities, anything that's going to involve anything academic, just making sure that they know, so then the parents can ensure that their child is there, they have the necessary materials and readily available to learn. Short version.
Like Mr. Muhammad said, I think the key is the communication. I think any different types of communication are necessary, not just an email or a bright arrow, but our websites. I think the more communication that our parents know about, the more that they're informed, because we do have all different types of programs. I mean, one in particular I was just speaking with a parent about is our Twilight program, and about making sure that students are on grade level, because if they're not passing one class, that could put them behind in a grade level. And because our students were not allowed to go to summer school if they were in the 9th grade, we do have a Twilight program that could put them at mid-year where they are on grade level. And so, and we have different things like AP courses that, or classes that can prepare students for success on the AP test. And so a lot of parents don't know about those things and don't have their students attend those. But if we have more communication in our schools, I believe that it sets our students up for more success.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I think the only thing that I would add to the communication is another word, and that's exposure. I think since the pandemic, we've been able to not have as many restrictions. So opening our doors and exposing our parents to what we have available. I know one of the things that we try to do at Jenkins High School is not just focus on the seniors or the ninth graders. We have a 10th grade night. We have a junior parent night. We have an AP dual enrollment night. And those nights are set aside to meet with those parents, expose those parents to what we have available. And again, that exposure piece, having the opportunity for students to come in and shadow, parents to come in and see what we have. Because if we don't share that, then our story is not being told. So in addition to what my colleagues have said, I would say that's an important piece too.
Thank you.
Okay.
I say ditto.
All right, nice. Thank you. Ms. Hoskins-Brown, Ms. Grabowski, and Ms. Hall.
Thank you. This is I always feel for you all because you bring this content to us and then we really start digesting it and talking about it and then you stand there for 30 minutes. So this is really more a comment from my colleagues because Mr. Johnson brought up two really interesting concepts for us in his questions. And one is that the nature of the district as a static entity, how we communicate about change relative to, you were talking about the admissions criteria. And I think from a board point of view, I think a board answer to the question is, how do we communicate to the parents who are in that other place of FOMO, my child would have gotten into a program under this standard but not the other and I missed out. I think that it's an opportunity for us to remind them that the district administration is not static. You're also a parent who would have had transportation, who doesn't have transportation now, and we've had many, many conversations about that. But I think the fluidity of our ability to change these kinds of requirements is, let's see, I'm going to find an analogy. I think about my garden. My garden is in the same place in my yard, but I can't grow the same way every year. And the same plants that I grow don't respond in the same way. They move when the sun moves. They move according to a number of different things. We are growing the intellect of young people, and it requires that we have a great deal of plasticity in how we receive them and allow them to move through what we're doing. So I think that there can't be an expectation of us being static, and I think we just have to kind of reiterate that to parents. But you also raised another concept that I found stimulating, and that was us rethinking our policy on how we change admissions in choice programs. And I think that there may be an opportunity for us to re-examine that in a way that recognizes that we are in the governance lane. And how kids go into choice programs is solely in administration. That is not governance. We don't do that. But we spend a lot of time talking about it as board members because that's what people call us about. They're mad because their young person didn't get in the program they wanted to. They want to know why, if you put a backup or second choice, it puts you at a disadvantage or they perceive it. We spend a lot of time talking to parents about that, even though that's really not our lane. So I think that there is a way, if you're willing to draft something, I would be excited to read how you could conceive, how we could have a policy that governs how we look at it, but at the same time keeps us out of the logistics that we're not supposed to be in. Does that make sense? Would you be willing to participate in something like that?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Grabowski and then Ms. Hall.
So first a question and then a comment. And this might be, I don't know if this is a Ms. Ball-Oliver question or a principal question. So going back to some of the examples Dr. Cave presented about getting those students up to where they are, and I guess it's kind of a collective question. Are we a and I know you can't answer in a typical way, but do we have the resources in our schools that we need to be able to get those students to where they need to be, or are we having to bring in extra teachers or resources? And I ask that question with the lens of also launching our fantastic literacy task force recommendations and the extra resources that that will take. And so I think it's an important question for us just to think about.
So I would say that looking at the data of the school, looking at the data at the individual schools, that I think that we could use additional resources where the data leads us it is most needed, and examine what is occurring in those schools and what those support structures look like. So I will tell you that we could use additional resources at schools based on the data, and I think that every principal sitting in here, and as a former principal, I would tell you, yes, I need additional resources, but I think what I need needs to be based on the data and what my students' needs are. So that would be more individualized, and how I could support them to getting to where they need to be. So some things are the same, but some things would be individualized as well based on my specific school data, which would apply probably to principals standing here, but then all of our schools have varying needs.
Okay. Any of our principals have any comments or reflections? And if not, that's okay. Okay. And then my second is, and I think I may have mentioned this at a previous meeting, and I guess this is, I'll look at Mr. Hediger and his team. And I think we're in the process of looking at revamping our website, but one of the things that I think would be so helpful for our families, particularly because we have so many families that are moving in, is right now, if you're new to our district and you go to our website, you got to click on every school. You got to try and figure out, and you got to, I would love for us to have a schools guide that highlights not only our choice school programs, but all of our schools, that really gives a snapshot of, in one place that's really easy to find. And I think that will do a couple things. Number one, it's a great welcome to the district. Here are your choices. But also, I think it can help families learn about schools that they may not know a whole lot about, and they may read in that guide, oh, wow, I had no idea that this school does that. The other thing is, I think we have a lot of families that say, oh, such and such is a great school, but may not really fully understand the rigor or the requirements, whether it's arts, academics, or something else that goes along with that. And so I think it would be helpful as we're going through that choice process, as you're putting down your choice schools, that there's something within that if you're putting down, STEM Academy or Garrison, where you read what that information is about. Miss Melville hasn't been picked on yet, so I'll call him Miss Tanya, because I had many years with Ellis, and in serving on school council, one of the things we talked about repeatedly was the misunderstanding around Montessori education. A lot of people hear, oh, Charles Ellis is wonderful, and they think they know what Montessori means, but they don't, and then they get into that environment, and they're not taking the time to become invested in learning about the philosophy behind a Montessori education. And if that knowledge was part of the process coming in, and that recognition and the opportunity to really increase that knowledge through the application process, I think that's something that could be beneficial for all of our families.
So in our constant review, that was the most latest, I think, feedback. There will be a button, much like there is with the transportation button. You have to click and say, I attest that I completely understand. You have to do that twice, that transportation is not provided in the choice programs. You will have to do the same thing as it relates to understanding the program components, the requirements and components of that program to include the academic rigor before you submit the application. We just want to make sure that parents understand what the expectations of the program are. And so there'll be guidance there to explain it, but what we've done is I think the principals included that because they also included all of the support structures and everything. So just you understand our program and here are the expectations, because they don't want anyone to end up on probation or all those other components. So they just want to make sure they understand that, as well as here's how you reach out and here's how we support you.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's part of it, yes. So what she's, so Dr. Hoskins Brown was asking about, so yes, I'm talking about before that and during. So it's great that we have that, but we just want to make sure that we have that information, like in an easy to find. And I know I've mentioned it before, but just an opportunity to plant that seed again.
Are you wanting like a link that says choice programs? Because all you have to do is write choice programs, and it pulls up a 27-page document that literally goes school by school with the school logo and tells you every single thing and all the criteria.
It took
me like typing in choice programs, and it was the first hit. So I'm just trying to figure out if you want like a button that they push rather than having to type choice programs into the search bar.
Because we do have the choice booklet, and that's what
I just want it, I want it number one, yeah, somewhere easy
Okay.
to find. I want it easy to find. When you go to schools, it says schools overview, something. I mean, I'm not going to get into that level of micromanaging. I'm just saying that right now, it's not intuitive to do that. And if you're new to this district, you don't know if we call them specialty schools, choice schools, whatever else. And I think we have an opportunity within that to not single out our choice schools, but to present them within the context of all of our schools.
Yeah, so just very quickly, the website there's a drop-down mechanism where you can find every school in our district on an easy drop-down menu. If I hear correctly, though, you're looking for a bit more of a robust experience there to tell what is the unique components of the individual schools, and specifically to highlight those that are choice programs. And to Dr. Brinkman's point, yes, we do have a comprehensive choice program booklet that is released annually. Now, one of the things we do, though, is we strategically release that during the heightened experience of those that are getting ready for the application process, which begins annually, as we all know, in January. So that is a marquee component that we call it. Our word for the main splash page on the website is the marquee. Choice program booklet hits that marquee annually during a certain time period. But we will certainly look at our schools list to add some robust information about their offerings and backgrounds and highlight some choice.
Well, and I know even for our schools, they have to work within our framework. So there's limited flexibility for our schools to even be able to highlight what they may even want to be able to. So I don't want to get into the weeds of this on this conversation, too much. But I think the easier we make it to find information, the better we're all served.
All right, and Ms. Hall?
Okay, very quickly, because we don't want to keep you standing much longer. I had to take a course recently, and they emphasized the importance of ninth grade. And I heard Ms. Handy mention ninth grade programs for a minute. I just want, since you're all high school principals there, do you feel that our ninth grade programs are strong enough? Is there something that we are not doing that might help so that we don't have a lot of kids failing that ninth grade year and kind of setting a dismal course for the rest of their time there? Is there something else we need to be doing that we're not, that would help to strengthen our ninth grade experience across the district? Now, my snarky friend said here, of course, make sure our middle schools are good, which, yes, snarky friend said that. Yeah, but that's so true, but we're sending you what we have, so tell us what you think we might do in middle school, perhaps, or whatever, to make that ninth grade opportunity a real opportunity and not a downer for parents.
So my colleagues and I agree that was a robust question. But I will say some of the resources and the new implementations for this upcoming year, we're really excited about as a team with that literacy approach. Light Sail is one of the resources that we're implementing that will focus on some of our reading skills to ensure that they have the growth that they need, the Lexile growth that they need. So that Achieve 3000 is another resource that we'll be implementing and using with our ninth graders that we think will help. And just having that strong foundation as they come in, I think will help. So, are there ways and things that we're doing to continuously look for additional resources? We are, but the new ones that we have that we'll be implementing this year, I know as a high school team, we're really excited about.
Also, Ms. Hall, to your point about organizational and the social aspect of it sometimes is the struggle for our ninth graders. Two of the high school principals, they're not here. I'll give credit to Dr. Hazard Robinson. I think Ms. Brooks have approached about course that we used to do through advisement, and I think we may have gotten away from about helping them to acclimate to high school, socializing, to actually acclimate from a social standpoint and to learn about your school, the history, but also the support structures, how important it is to be successful in ninth grade. So we're looking to resurrect. They're working on that. They've been tasked, since they would like to see it, bringing that back in a more formalized structure so that we can provide that to our ninth graders. And then we did work with eighth graders as well, so they understood that. So to the other aspect of that, social and organizational.
Organization
well, as
as well.
We're real interested, like ninth grade counselors. Do you have enough? Are there people in your buildings who can concentrate on the dilemmas and the problems of a ninth grader? As you know, I read all the time, we're supposed to have 250 students to one counselor. I don't know exactly where we are with that, but those kinds of things that could make a difference in a child succeeding or not. Where do you feel we stand with that?
You want me to keep answering? No. Going back to the wish list, I mean, additional
There you go.
counselors would be
There you go.
phenomenal. I can't speak for the other high schools, but I know with Jenkins, we split the grade levels because I think placing an entire ninth grade group, an entire senior group on one counselor can be very taxing. I know this past year we had 438 ninth graders. So for one person to, take that approach, that's a lot. So we split ours, and I think most high schools probably do the same thing. Going back to what Ms. Ball Oliver said too, I think organization, teaching our students, our ninth graders, answering some of the questions as though they're seniors, helped kind of reversing that. Advisement, we use, that at a lot of schools to stress the importance of organization and other things other than those content areas, so to speak.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for all of your work. I'm just going to make a couple of comments. I do have one question. So, I'm a student. I've done everything right. Okay? My grades are there, my attendance there, my behavior's there, and I did all of this so I could get into a choice school. But I'm put in a lottery, and I don't get into that choice school. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with what we're telling our students. So when we had children's choir, we would start, we talked to our parents. We talked to our parents in 5th grade. And we let them know, here are all the things your kids are going to have to get into Savannah Arts Academy. We worked with our kids. We tutored our kids. I don't want this to be a disincentive to be excellent. And I don't want any kid, especially a kid that comes from low economic status. And this is their ticket. And they did all of the work. They did everything. And because we have changed this rubric, they're not guaranteed a seat in a choice school. I don't think that's right. Number 2, I do believe it's a policy issue, but that's for another day. Number 3, I am going to ask that this be taken off the agenda for today. I think this is a decision that should be left to the new superintendent. I don't think it's fair to a new superintendent to walk into an area like this that is so fraught. I think this, that's it. Oh, I do have one question for for the principals. Since we changed the criteria years ago during COVID, how many teachers have we lost in our choice schools who couldn't do it? Have we lost any teachers?
At Johnson, we have at Johnson. I can only speak for Johnson. We haven't lost any teachers. You said teachers, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we haven't lost any teachers because they couldn't do it. Most have gotten promotions and gone to other areas in the district, but not.
Thank you.
Haven't lost any teachers.
All right. All right.
Or retired.
We're almost out of time. Thank you guys so much. And David, and who else? And then Dr. Ovett. It's fine.
I think from the inception, when it was magnet programs, there was never a guarantee. I did everything right. I did everything right to get into Jenkins engineering program. Everything right. And guess what? I didn't get in because it wasn't a guarantee. Never been a guarantee. Recently found out, I will thank him Father's Day. He won't watch this, so he won't know, that my dad wrote Superintendent Russo a couple of letters telling him how he felt. And if you can amplify me a little bit, that's my dad. When he has an idea and a thought about things, guess what? I'm glad I didn't get in because it was my plan. But not everybody gets in because there aren't guarantees. I believe that these individuals' work shouldn't be backburnered for the next superintendent. I think we as a board should support this regulation that we don't even vote on anyhow, so that it's one less thing that the superintendent has to deal with. And this group thus can get their work going and figure out if they need to change the threshold of success. So that's my 2 cents on those comments.
Good morning, and thank you to my colleagues for continuing to work on this. As I've expressed to you most recently last week, the work will continue and we will not always be understood. Our job is to make sure that we clarify the message. I give great honor to the work that you've done and hope that you will continue to do that so that all students have an opportunity. It has been our position as professional educators to support children and to understand that not one of us sitting up here in the audience, in our schools, in our community is perfect. Each of us has something that we must continue to work on. I may be a great writer, but I cannot dunk a basketball. Everybody has something that they need to work on. I thank you for supporting the full approach to children, and I hope that you will continue that. My father, who was much wiser than I ever imagined, said if 20 years later you're still thinking the same way in terms of your work, that you've lost 20 years. Thank you for considering that our approach to this work must be continuous improvement. The way we use our telephone has changed. The way we bank, do our banking has changed. The way our automobiles operate have changed. The way our libraries operate has changed. Our access to reading materials has changed. Our access to medical services has changed. Our schools will continue to change. So thank you for your work. Thank you, board members, for your contributions. It makes for a robust discussion. Differences of opinion, as Mr. Moss and I discuss all the time, should be welcomed so that our students see a model that encourages them to think for themselves, to clearly articulate their positions, but also to be open to thinking broadly and hearing the other side. So I encourage you to continue to do the work that we've been doing. Thank you so much for your efforts. And thank you on behalf of all the children.
that you serve.
Thank you very much. And again, thank all of you for excellent work. Excellent work. Okay, that was all that we were covering in this workshop. So I will accept one motion that we adjourn. All in favor? Aye. We will see everyone at 11. Thank you. In 7 minutes.